Yeah, Jack Grealish changed the game. It's as simple as that. I was finishing off my match ratings after 75 minutes because I knew I had to go and interview the players, and England were at 6s and 7s, and so were Germany. And Grealish changed the game. He absolutely did. And you can see he's a very confident lad. I noticed him when he came to Old Trafford the season before last, and he was man of the match. He is versatile. And a reason I think he did stand out in that England team is because they're so cautious. The way Gareth Southgate sets up is so cautious, and he would have been slaughtered for that if England would have lost. But they're not conceding goals. They're not scoring many goals either. So I think it was very important for Harry Kane that he scored, because he was having a nothing game. But Grealish was the game changer. He was on, 22 minutes, and he was a key player. And even before he'd kicked a ball, the ovation he got from that Wembley crowd was massive. It was the biggest roar of the game. Since the start of the game, when there was a national anthem, it was up until the point when Grealish came on that it really kicked off. And that roar was vindicated because he changed the game. So I suspect he will start. I'd like to see him start as an Englishman. But even if he doesn't start, the option of bringing him on, I don't think he normally plays naturally on the right. And I think Saka, he had a good first 10 minutes, probably better than any of the other players. But he faded. He's a young kid. He's inexperienced and needs talking through the match. But I think Grealish is the real deal. And if you're a Villa fan, what I'd say is Villa have got a really good manager in Dean Smith. I came across Dean Smith 10 years ago when he gave a chance to a friend of mine who was a professional footballer whose child had died at age 2 and was looking for a contract, and nobody would go near him because mentally they felt that, he had too much on his plate. And Dean Smith gave him a chance, put him as his centre half, made him the main man, had him as an assistant working with him, and that lad went on to manage Bristol City. So I came across Dean Smith then when he was at Warsaw, and he struck me as someone who was extremely personable. He was doing a very good job at Warsaw, but on a human scale, what he did to a friend of mine, I will never forget that. And he actually made the right decision as well. So I followed his career quite closely then when he went to Brentford and then at Villa. And I love it that he's managing the team he supports. I think that it's great in football, and I'd almost say the same for Jack Grealish. Stay where you're loved. And I know you're going to be tempted by more money and Champions League football and all that, but I love that Athletic Bilbao syndrome, if you like, where players just stay. And there's lots of examples of it, and I think history remembers him very well. I don't think Alan Shearer ever regretted going back to Newcastle rather than Manchester United. Obviously, his trophy cabinet remained empty, but I think all these years later, he feels that he made the right decision.
How important has the return of Harry Maguire been for this England team?
I think it's been significant. I don't think Tyrone Mings had a bad game against Croatia, and again, I was stood right behind the goal. It was interesting watching Kieran Trippier talk Mings through, but somebody who knows far more than I do in top-level football said to me, as England go further through, when they come up against the likes of France, people like Pogba will just be hitting balls behind Mings for fun. And I remember that comment, and I'm repeating that comment. That's now not going to happen because France are out. But Maguire has played many big games for Manchester United. He won one of the Man of the Match awards yesterday. He's an important player. I think at United, people realised how important he was when he wasn't there. After he picked up that injury at Villa Park, and then he missed the Europa League final. More members of Harry Maguire's family went to Gdansk for that final, even though he wasn't playing, because they wanted to see him lift the Europa League. And some of the players didn't take up any of their allocation to go to the game. And Maguire's a real deal. And I think I heard more songs yesterday about Harry Maguire than any other England player. And that shows that he's loved by England fans, probably more than he is by United fans. United fans rate him a lot, but they're comparing him to Vidic's and Ferdinand's, and there are worries when he plays alongside Victor Lindelof, more so with Lindelof than Harry Maguire. But of the players United have looked at to maybe replace Lindelof, they've seen that, they too make mistakes. The grass isn't always greener. And Victor Lindelof had a bad night. Varane is a top player, but he hasn't been wholly inconsistent. Pau Torres looked pretty ropey to my eye, sat in the stands in Seville on Sunday, but I know he's a very good player. So remains to be seen what will happen there. But Maguire's a real deal.
You stick with the three at the back now for the next game, obviously, Andy, I assume. And then when it comes to the other changes, are you starting Jack Grealish then ahead of Saka the next day in the exact same formation?
Yeah, I would. I know that some of the England players who are missing out, clearly they're not happy. And if you're called up for 30 days or whatever it is and you're not playing, you're not happy. End of. You cannot pretend otherwise. So Southgate's not making many changes. A couple have been enforced on him with Mount and Chilwell. But I think caution comes first with him. And people might say England have got these great young attacking players. Why aren't you even using Jadon Sancho, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, when Harry Kane's not been playing well? But then Harry Kane, he got his first goal. He's obviously been a hugely important figure for England, and he may come good. I just think Jack Grealish is too good, having seen what I saw last night, not to start. And I worry whether that caution will be England's undoing, because Germany started very well against England. It was Germany who looked the more confident team. And right throughout that game, I was thinking, Germany are going to win this. This is what happens. Germany just beat England. And it was all set up for that fall. So it's to the absolute credit that people like Grealish made sure that didn't happen. But I think what you'll see now is a groundswell for Grealish to be starting. As I said, that Raw last night was so loud when he came on. And England were pretty boring until the goals. They kept the clean sheet again. Jordan Pickford was good. I was pretty impressed by John Stones. He was even more vocal than Maguire. Trippier as well. I think Phillips and Rice are doing the job that are going to keep them both in the team. Phillips has been a real eye-opener, especially in that first game against Croatia. And you look at England's record now, it starts to stack up, and you think, look at all the teams who've gone out of the competition. Now, I've watched Belgium twice in person. I still think Belgium would beat England. But you have this crazy Englishness with the game being at Wembley. There's going to be even more fans if England were to get through against Ukraine. And I think Ukraine are good as well. We've seen that. You saw them come back against Holland in one of the earlier games and thought, wow, there's real talent here. And I'll be passing through Ukraine on my way back from Baku. So I hope I don't get held there because of my nationality after go wrong in Rome. So interesting. I'm enjoying it. Now I'm enjoying it as a journalist. I'm very lucky to be doing what I'm doing. Some of my mates are like, can't get into this. Others are like, this is brilliant. So I don't know how the general population is seeing it, but in person at games, there's a huge amount of enthusiasm there.
You said you've seen the Belgians in person twice. They were at the Belgium-Portugal game. What was the story with Bruno Fernandes' tournament? Is it pure exhaustion? Is it a manager not quite knowing how to use his talents? Is it a mix of these?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of those, and slightly baffling. Baffling in the way that Pogba's better for France than he often is for Manchester United. More confidence, more trusted. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's trust in Bruno Fernandes is absolute. And yet, when he plays for the national team, the national team manager was getting criticised for not using him. I think there was some overlap in the positions that Cristiano Ronaldo plays, and Cristiano Ronaldo remains the top dog. But look at the number of games that Bruno Fernandes played last season as well. And remained hugely talismanic and important for Manchester United. And Solskjaer used him because he needed him. And there were games in the League Cup when I saw the reaction from Man United fans. Why is he playing? And he's playing because Solskjaer wants and needs a trophy. And he needs a League Cup. That's why he's coming on at Luton to change the game. Or at Everton, he's starting. And United won those matches. But I think Fernandes is a very, very good player, but he's had a disappointing tournament. And that can happen. It's happened to Mbappe. international football can be a weird beast, and Portugal had the unfortunate luck to be drawn in that group and then to come out of that group and play against Belgium. And it was a very tight game. Portugal were the best team in the first half, I thought, in Seville, in difficult conditions. It was really hot. And there was that wonder goal then from Hazard's brother. And that changed everything. And Belgium just sat back and defended. But tight margins in top-level club football and top-level international football. And England just got the better of them, which is why everyone in London's smiling.
Who do England want to see in the final then, Andy?
I think England reaching a final would be a huge achievement. I flew out to Russia a couple of years ago for that Croatia semi-final. Yeah, okay, England are going to the World Cup final, and unfancied Croatia beat them. And we're a better team as well. So I'm not entirely convinced by this England team yet. I thought that France and Belgium were better than England. England cannot meet France, obviously. England are in the more favourable side of the draw by virtue of finishing top of the group and other things falling in for them. I'd say that Belgium are the favourites to win the competition, but England have first got to be... It would be so England to go out against in Rome on penalties against Ukraine. But I think semi-final and a final. But I think England this morning are in the strongest position that they've been in. And looking at some of those players in the eyes after the game, I thought Declan Rice spoke very well when I spoke to him. Raheem Sterling was a bit more predictable. But Rice impressed me. And there's a confidence there. The problem Southgate has got is he's got to manage a squad which is twice as big as the number of players that he's got. And players who are not being selected are not in the best frame of mind. And that's natural. And that's a problem for the manager.
It is a problem, but at least if you're going to be telling your agent stuff that you want to get into the papers about how things aren't going well, you're going to get shouted down by the general public at the moment because the crowd and the spirit and the atmosphere is it's coming home. So
totally.
there's power for him there. What's your assessment of why Southgate? I was going to say it's different, but he's not different just yet because he hasn't actually achieved anything that other managers haven't achieved, except beating Germany for the first time in a knockout game, and also since '66, and also winning a knockout game in 90 minutes in the European Championship. So he has definitely got things on the right track. What is it that he's got?
I think he's fundamentally a decent person, and I think you can see that. Obviously, he's got the football knowledge. He's a safe pair of hands. He came through after a setback in club football, working with the 21s. Obviously, you need to get results when you manage England, and he's been getting them. The World Cup was good. You're absolutely right about the groundswell of opinion. People sing Gareth Southgate's name probably more than any player I've heard, apart from Harry Maguire. There's a lot of love there for him. You sense that if England would have lost to Germany, there would have been a huge amount of criticism for him for being too cautious. But they didn't, they won. And I saw him speaking after the game and putting football in the context of the wider world, saying, we've had a very difficult year or two. It's nice to bring joy to people. He doesn't forget that. He doesn't forget the fundamentals of, he kept talking about the fans as well. And you could say that's colour by numbers stuff, but I sense it's real with him. I think he looks the part. I think that tactically, he's cautious, of course he is, but maybe he feels that he needs to be because there are better international teams out there. Maybe he just wants to build this absolute solid base. To beat Croatia in that first game was a great result. Didn't feel it on the day, but beating Croatia, a very good Croatia team, who didn't look very good because England didn't let them play very well. That was significant. So, yeah, people are having Southgate. They are, if they go out now in the quarterfinals, they'll be like, okay,
yeah,
quarterfinals, it'll change again.
Against Ukraine. Let's wait and see what happens. One last thing. That game was supposed to be in Dublin. It was supposed to be Germany against England in Dublin. So I don't know what gift the country of England could give the country of Ireland? Nothing springs to mind immediately, nothing obvious that you guys could give us, you know, just to make peace between the nations and to say thanks very much. So if you want to think about that one for a while and you know, ask the general populace.
I was supposed to be going to Dublin. I'd booked my flights to Dublin. I booked to stay in an area quite close to Lansdowne Road, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, the place you're staying is full of rugby fans, not football fans." I thought, okay, well, I've never heard that before because I've been to Dublin several times. And it's a great shame that Dublin and Bilbao missed out. I love both cities. I've been to both cities many times. I was really looking forward to it. And instead of going to Dublin, I'm now going to sit on a plane for the whole of today to a country that is not even my destination. And then tomorrow I'm going to go onwards towards Baku. So there you go. I can't complain. I'm being paid for this, but Bilbao and Dublin were absolutely places I wanted to go to. And I saw, and I know there'll be Republic of Ireland fans who have no great feeling for England and vice versa. But England are bringing joy to the English at the moment, and that brings joy to most of the people in England, but not all. In Manchester, I know people who couldn't care less about the national team, but it's got people finally like my mum. My mum doesn't go to games, and she's like, "I've bought my flags. We're gonna do it." I'm like, "Where's this come from? You never even mentioned the England national team to me when I was growing up." So I think it's called football fever.
There you go, Andy. Good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thank you.
Andy Mitten there. You can, of course, read his stuff on United We Stand and in The Athletic and a bunch of other places as well. Declan Lynch, I think, won the internet last night with his tweet. Worth remembering that Neffet gave England home advantage there.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't bear thinking about the ferocious atmosphere that would have been in the Aviva Stadium last night had 100 England fans and 100 German fans been allowed to sit in there.
Well, we might have had 10,000, wouldn't we? It would have been, and most of those would have been Irish. So
yeah,
who would they have been supporting?
Yeah, it's true. Like, I mean, obviously there was Irish in the crowd last night. Let's not forget. I mean, he had his 4 pints. He had his jeans and shoe.
John Delaney,
yeah.
Picture in the front of the Sun this morning. We'll get to the papers in a couple of minutes' time as well. Right, a reminder, OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. We have a very busy show still to come. Keith Wood is standing by. We're going to get to him next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB Sports is the place to follow all the live and uninterrupted Lions coverage this summer. Lions legends Brian O'Driscoll and Alan Quinlan will be our commentators for the 3 huge tests against South Africa. We'll have plenty of expert analysis and input too from the likes of Devin Toner, Niamh Briggs, Sean Cronin and Jack Carty. That's the Lions tour against the world champion South Africa. All the big match build-up, match commentary and analysis live on the OTB Sports app.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
Why not check out the Boyle Sports betting app for a full range of markets on shots on target, assists, passes and more on every match of the Euros, all powered by Opta. Rated 4.5 stars on the App Store, you'll find all our latest odds and offers for the Euros. So remind us where to go, Stevie G.
Boyle Sports, this is betting.
18 plus, bet responsibly, gamblingcare.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, assuming it goes ahead, we are very excited to let you know that OTB Sports will be broadcasting full live commentary of all the 9 games that the British and Irish Lions will play this summer, including, of course, the 8 in South Africa. Brian O'Driscoll and Alan Quinlan are going to be alongside Neil Tracy on commentary for the 3 test matches. Devin Toner, Niamh Briggs and Jack Carty are amongst the co-coms for the warm-up games. Up next, it's the Emirates Lions versus the British and Irish Lions on Saturday at 5 o'clock live on News Talk. Our coverage will be brought to you in association with Vodafone, lead partner of the British and Irish Lions. Keith Wood, obviously, also a key part of our coverage. Keith, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Before we talk about Conor Murray and just how important a moment it is in his career, I did want to just get your temperature on where we are at the moment. Jacques Nienaber was on out talking to the media in South Africa, saying it's really important for rugby that it goes ahead and for the country. And we had a South African journalist on last night saying this will be a bit of a distraction for the people of South Africa. At the same time, we're seeing fairly horrific accounts of the impact that COVID is having in Johannesburg with the absence of hotel beds at this point. So, they're going through some of the stuff that we went through when we cancelled sport and when we continued to play sport while very difficult situations were raging.
Yeah, look, I think the morals on it are almost complicated, which sounds like a contradiction in terms, but they're going through what we went through at different times over the last 15, 16 months, where there's a high level of fear, where you are trying to make certain everybody stays safe, where you want to ensure that there's enough hospital beds, where there is a consideration that everybody's in it together. So I think it becomes a little bit difficult. And I remember we were talking about this a couple of months ago. The Lions players all got vaccinated at around the same time, where everybody was being vaccinated within the UK. So I don't think that there's that sense within it. But there is that sense in South Africa, because so few people in such a tiny percentage have actually been vaccinated, that you see elite sport getting it ahead of them. So that causes a little bit of a problem about the equity of the whole thing. There is also an essential element to, I'm not going to say entertainment, but I'm going to say to life in general, where you do need something to try and keep your mind away from it. And I think they're striking a balance between that. And of course, the third part then is the financial ramifications. And they're the ones that for everybody who is railing against this are the ones that make no sense whatsoever, that you can't have financial imperatives put in place of moral issues. I don't know where I sit on it. I think it's somewhere in between them, actually. There are a couple of logistical issues too that happen, and I don't quite know what the full logistics of the Lions, and I'm sure Gatland and his crew and everybody have been building and working on this. But to stay in a bubble for 6 weeks is going to be incredibly difficult, as tight a bubble as has been mooted. But also there is the situation that what happens if you have to go to hospital? If a player gets injured, has to go for surgery, if he needs to get a scan, how are they all done in the level of still keeping that bubble sacrosanct? And we've seen through sport over the last number of months that the best laid plans fall apart from time to time. So I think it's incredibly challenging. I'm still confused as to whether, I mean, for me, I had felt fairly early that this tour should have been postponed for 4 years, which would be horrendous for everybody. But this is a once in 100-year pandemic, and sometimes you have to make those decisions. But the Lions have made different decisions, and South Africa, and they've made decisions that they believe they can stand and hold up to. I hope they do, actually, and I hope that standard of bubble that they're able to keep is good enough to keep everybody safe, and hopefully good enough to help lift people out of the gloom, because we've been in a sense of gloom for this for a long, long time.
Yeah, okay. One last question then. A UK or an Ireland-based tour where they come here, that was never really an option in your mind, just because that's not the whole point of the Lions? Was that it?
Yeah, I think you could have done it, but when those conversations were happening, we had no certainty for where we were. And I don't want at any stage to go and speak in hindsight in terms of this, because these things change day by day. We look at the announcement yesterday. The government has delayed the opening of hospitality again, because you're trying to deal with information in real time. So I think it becomes incredibly hard to make decisions, and you're going to get castigated for anyone that happens, which is why I'm not, because I think people are trying to make decisions with the information that they have at their disposal at any moment in time. the difficulty is that the circumstances are changing every few weeks.
Yeah, like that's the hindsight decision, Keith, isn't it? Like, I mean, right now, if you could turn back the clocks, you would have it in Ireland or in Britain, but you can't do that.
Well, you can't do that because we just didn't quite know whether there was going to be another wave and another wave, or whether there was going to be a different variant that would come out that would be resistant to vaccines. And I think for me, that was the reason to not do it. But I didn't have commercial skin in the game either, so it was easy for me to say delay it by 4 years. And like, how pissed off would all the players be if they don't get a chance to go? But look, I think it puts everybody in a very tough position. I was listening again to South Africa saying that if this Lions tour were to not go ahead, that could be the end of the Springboks, you know, and that financially they are on a cliff edge. And we had that with Philip Brown 12 months ago when we discussed him on the State of the Union, that it was existential, and I still believe it is. I think there's many people spinning plates trying to keep a lot of sport and society alive. So it's, you know, and we have to, you know, we're just part of society. We're not any more special than it. So
yeah, fingers crossed everything can happen safely and the bubble remains secure and no further outbreak in the South African squad as well. Let's move on and talk about the rugby and park that conversation, because it's going to be an ongoing conversation, I think, right up until the Lions come home. Conor Murray, a captain, tell us about this. What does it mean for his part of Limerick, for your part of Limerick, for his career? It was a bit of a left field choice, it seems. In retrospect, it makes a lot of sense.
I think it's a total left field choice, and I wouldn't. We discussed it immediately when we heard Eoin Jones got injured in post-match discussion. I named 3 other people. I didn't name him at all, and I look. It's brilliant, actually. Brilliant for Gary Eoin. Brilliant for St. Munchin's, our school. He is a guy that came a bit late to. It's funny because he played for school. He took him a while to get on the team. Took him a while to get on other teams, and he seems to have been around forever since. It's his third Lions tour. He's a pretty calm guy. I would say some of the decision behind him being picked would have been through the difficulty I think he's had in the last couple of years from having an injury, from having a lot of flack in the media or on social media, a lot of criticism of whether he should be playing or not playing. And there was times at that time when he played very poorly. And I think he's been coming back and getting better. And I think he's having more confidence in his neck and shoulder where he was injured. And in the last 4 months or so, I think he's actually getting back to if not quite at his best, at a very high standard and at a level of assurity that I think he'd lost, and I think he has it back. So when you go through that hard, tough grind, you come out of it with a little bit more in the bank too. And I think it also highlights or outlines that Gatland thinks he's starting 9. And that's a great confidence boost to him. I've been interested listening to some of the noises, and you have to read through these things when you're on tour. Nobody's going to say anything bad about you. But I've liked it from different players, from Jamie George talking about the relationships that they'd picked up on the previous tour, that there was a kind of warm feeling for the fact that one of the younger guys on the previous tours, and he wasn't that young, but one of the younger guys was now top of the tree, and they're giving him a lot of slagging and banter over it. But there seems to be a high level of affection towards him and respect, and that's what's required for a Lions captain.
And that's the type of stuff that we don't really have a clue about. That's private between the people who are there soldiering in the field.
Well, I think if we were to say with comfort, I know Conor, I can't say I know him very well, but there is a high level of camaraderie towards him, and there's a huge level of respect towards him as a player. And players know what he can do, what he has done, what he's delivered on in the past. So the next step is to whether he has the captaincy capabilities. And one thing that I think we gloss over a little bit from time to time is captaincy is adhering to a culture, being the leading sense of that culture, and combining as many leaders as you possibly can within a team. So it isn't about making every single decision on the field. It is absolutely not about that. And he just needs to do what he's doing, because he is one of the leaders on the field anyway at playing at 9. He has a huge impact on the game, and he needs to be able to take in additional information from other people around him and get them to follow him. And from all the noises so far, that doesn't seem to be much a stretch for them because of the respect that's there.
Is he a future Ireland captain?
Well, it'll see how he gets on, but of course he is. If this is something that strikes a chord with him, I don't know that he ever thought of being captain. It's a bit of a scary place to be, actually, because you come in for an awful lot of the flack, but he's used to a bit of flack for the last while. So, I mean, if he wears it easily, why not?
Yeah, and we were asking the question, did we miss this a little bit? Were we unaware of his potential? Sometimes it takes somebody from outside the camp to go, you guys have got this amazing leader right here, and you just need to elevate him a little bit.
Yeah, and that can often be the case, and sometimes you just need a chance. And it's like selection, actually. Some coaches like certain players, other coaches like other players. So if you look at England at the present moment in time, and some of the players that they have at their beck and call, they don't pick them at all. And many other teams would just glory in the fact of putting them onto the field. Just Eddie Jones, it doesn't suit his style of play. It doesn't suit what he wants to do or see in the players that he has. That's his job as coach, but he could be wrong.
There's other things that are kind of the aftermath of the game at the weekend in terms of the style of play and how long it's going to take the team to gel. It was a good first outing, a really good opportunity for that Celtic group to get out and establish, actually, you know what, I've done very well here. We've got a win under our belts. You were talking about the nervousness, I think, before the very first game on the tour, and making sure that the whole atmosphere was set properly in the past. And, there's a very short window here. This tour is going to be over. In terms of these players' careers, it's going to be over in the blink of an eye. So, all of a sudden, if you played well last weekend, that's a massive bonus for you in terms of selection, in terms of your motivation going forward, and just in terms of training sessions, all that kind of stuff, right?
I don't think anybody played badly last weekend. I don't think the Lions set the world alight either last weekend. A couple of guys played well enough to put their hands up. I find it very hard to read that much into that game. It's like a scratch Lions team, almost like a Barbarians team to play, but without playing with the Barbarian spirit. There's a freedom to playing for the Barbarians because it doesn't matter a damn if you win or lose. That's not the case with the Lions. And I'm trying not to get too excited at the very start of the tour, because we'll run out of superlatives in about 2 weeks if we do. And this is, even though it's a short tour, there are 3 big tests at the end, and it's all being geared towards that idea. So Gatland has said he's going to pick every player to play in the first 3 matches. That may not happen because you could get a couple of injuries and guys don't get a run. Everything has been squeezed, so there's a rush to try and get players to play very well. So if we were to say what's the game plan that the Lions would play based on what we saw last Saturday, I think you'd come a cropper very quickly. I thought that was a group of players who said, let's play the most simplistic thing and let's do it well. Let's have a really good defence. I was happy with a lot of their defence, and they got beaten on the outside. And I thought defensively, the Lions looked very uncertain in the outside channels. That was the only area that worried me in defence, but the rest of it was excellent. But I don't think they showed a huge amount. And you get your chance, you play well. Training becomes infinitely more important than what happens on the early Saturdays, I think, or the early matches. I think that, for me, is important. I think the quality with which people are turning up to train, standard that they're bringing, the sense of understanding of what the Lions is about, is more important than the early matches.
There was one other thing I wanted to talk to you about before we head off. It's one of your former clubs, Harlequins, at the weekend, producing a performance that has been described as an all-time classic in beating the Exeter Chiefs. I mean, the turnaround in Quinn's fortunes from the start of the year, where Paul Gustard is gone and you're not quite sure what's going to happen next, to this bit where all of a sudden they are playing barbarian-style rugby, and the semi-final and final back-to-back, it seems like it's completely remarkable. A lot of people won't have seen this. So what has happened?
Well, for all intents and purposes, what seems to have happened is that Gustard was dictatorial. And this is the way I want to play, and want to play incredibly defensive and build it on the defence, and not put as much time towards attack. And I played for Quins for seven seasons. Quins were known predominantly as a cup team, an ability to set the world alight in April, May, June, right? That was their April and May, I suppose, in the times I was playing. And they were flash. Well, actually, I think Gustard did a really good job defensively, because the defence has been very good, very strong. But without that dictatorial view on it, it seems like the players and the coaching staff have said, this isn't really who we are. This is a false philosophy. Let's be who we think we are, which is, with Danny Kerr, like there's been mavericks in Quins forever, but in the last 10 years you've had Marler, Danny Kerr and Mike Brown, who do things their own way. I think that's the easiest way. And I think there's a high level of player rebellion in terms of how they play. And they, from being 6th or 8th, from being 8th at the time Gustard left, they lost a couple of matches afterwards, and then they went on a running and a winning streak. And during that streak, they gained confidence in themselves. They have the most magnificent out half. So my kids all play 9 or 10, and I say, look at Marcus Smith, look at the way he tackles a big guy, look at his pace and his I can't call it power, but his skills with the ball in hand are fantastic, but normally that's considered there's going to be a flip side to that you'll be poor defensively, and he's not. He sprints up into the line and he tackles the huge guys. He doesn't tackle them head on, he tackles them on the side. Technically fantastic. He has a big goose step, which he uses constantly, and he has the freedom of youth that
22.
22, but he looks, and he's played senior rugby for 4 years. He looks like a maverick because of some of the things he does, but he isn't. His goal kicking is peerless. As I said, his defense. So he's not flaky. He just has an unbelievable skill set. He's not a big man, and he plays with the freedom that he is allowed to play. And that's one of the parts now for me that I find very striking. Added to that, we have one of my next door neighbours, the Linus, the next generation, Michael Linus' son, playing on the wing.
Is he good?
He is good. He's quick, he's powerful, he's interesting. He made a couple of mistakes in the first half and made a couple of mistakes in the second half. And you know that could shatter a young fella, 21 years of age. It could shatter his confidence. He finished stronger than any other player on the field. Scored 2 tries in the last 7 or 8 minutes. Tough tries, but well done, really well positioned ball into contact, or into the tackle, so that they make certain he can get it down in the corner. They were just fantastic. But it was the ebb and flow of the game which was amazing. I thought it was extraordinary. I've actually loved watching the Premiership this year. I have been in favour of ring fencing, and they have brought in a type of that this year. I've always been in favour of it. I wrote an article about 22 or 3 years ago in relation to it, because very few teams were geared up to be at that top level, and the 1 in 12 chance of disappearing into oblivion was a limiting factor. So I thought it was an incredible advertisement for a game that has been, for a league that's been a bit stodgy for the last few years.
It's a transformative moment for the league, and unfortunately it seems like England in their future have a 22-year-old wunderkind at number 10. We could do one of those. Maybe we have one. Keith, great stuff. Thanks a million.
Pleasure. Cheers, gents.
Keith Wood giving us some thoughts on the Lions and the rebirth of English club rugby. 8:35 this morning here. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Loads of comments running through the England success last night. The Muller chance was a great chance, but he did still have an awful lot to do. Picked the ball up at halfway. Defenders gaining ground behind him. Pickford with loads of time to narrow the angle, says Brian. I mean, yeah, as I talked, like, it was very slow motion, though. As an Irishman myself, the English media and the fan base is the reason I dislike them, says Kieran. I mean, yeah. Shifty Lad says, morning, guys. I'm delighted Declan Rice chose England. He's so annoying, singing out the anthem with gusto, revving up the crowd, kissing the badge after the goals, and does more pointing than Kilkenny for Dublin. I mean...
You don't want that in Ireland. You don't want any... badge kissing or singing anthems.
We'd have made the last 16 of this tournament with two lads, wouldn't we?
Yeah. Two players can have a transformative impact on an international team, it turns out, and they will be better than most of the teams that Ireland, the best two players that Ireland would have come up against in this tournament.
Will says, I actually don't mind the English team. A lot of them are fairly likeable. Plus, their media has dialed down the hype the last few tournaments. It'll probably rock it now. Plus, if we got to Euros or World Cup semi-finals, I'm sure we'd never shut up about it. I mean, we never shut up about 1990. We only made the quarters. Lim says the Spain versus England final, it's on the cards. Is it? John Duggan, good morning to you. How are you?
Ger and Eoin, are we well?
I'm well. I enjoyed yesterday. I thought it was like high drama. In both games, we've kind of completely underrated what happened where Ukraine, led by Andrei Shevchenko, have managed to come through to the point where they're going to be playing England in a knockout game in a quarterfinals in Rome.
Ukraine are my overachievers. Which took the sting out of being all over France for winning this tournament. I still can't believe France are out and threw this thing away as they did against the Swiss. They've gone fanatically crazy over in England for this. A lot of my relations are English, and fanatically crazy. They've all got the retro jerseys on. Yesterday I was getting the photos from the family, and I turned on the BBC News after the Ukraine game, and it's the first 15 minutes is all about England, and this is a national thing. And then Peter Crouch's show, and the way they're speaking about it, they've almost won it, which is always a danger. But it was a significant milestone to beat the Germans at a knockout game, even though Jogi Löw outstayed his welcome by 3 years, and the Germans are a light of other days. But England have not conceded a goal in the competition, and that's not a bad record, whoever you play. And Southgate got his tactics right, moved it from 4-2-3-1 to 3-4-3, nullified the German wing backs, neutralised midfield, and Raheem Sterling is playing really, really well at the moment. And Harry Kane, the currency is goals, and he got one. So you'd have to think that England have got a really good chance now of being in the final. Whether they'll win it, I don't know, but I think being in the final is definitely a realistic achievement now.
They're a bit like Kerry in the noughties. There's a handy Euros here for them if they just if they keep their nerve.
Mayo in the final, yeah. No Tyrone's to worry about.
Spain could be this year's Mayo. Flaky, you know?
Arrogant.
No Tyrone.
Fans of Spanish teams are arrogant. Is that what you're saying?
So I think that it's all there for them now, and it'd be very disappointing if they don't get there. And what would he do against Ukraine? Because he's a chance potentially to be much more attacking in his lineup. Will Grealish gets the start? That's the interesting thing.
So you were saying earlier on that you think it's nailed on that he'll start with three at the back again against Ukraine. I don't think that. I think that like he is definitely a horses for courses. I also think that he might rest or protect either of the two central midfielders who got booked. So there's a chance Henderson plays. I think there's a good chance that he makes several changes to the team against Ukraine.
Yes, I think Henderson is getting back to fitness, isn't he? And I do think he will go 4-2-3-1 again. And I would expect Grealish to be one of those. And remember, Mount has come back into the equation now as well. Foden is in the equation. He will start Kane again, but I would agree with you. I think he can change the personnel without weakening the team. And that just is reflective of England having a much better squad. Because remember, in the World Cup 3 years ago, they didn't have a midfield. did Henderson. That was it. And it's amazing that the fall from grace of someone like Dele Alli, not even in the conversation, which is quite sad, actually.
And I think the other side of that, though, is like the abundance of talent that they have where, even if Dele Alli was playing well for Spurs, he probably wouldn't be in the conversation because they have an absolute slew of riches there, which really means that, they have to be amongst your favourites when you're talking about the World Cup. Like, if Harry Kane was in form, we would be making them nailed on to win this thing at this point. And maybe Harry Kane fills his boots against Ukraine because they are the type of opportunity that like we've seen. Ukraine gave plenty of opportunities to Sweden last night. So look, I think it's all. I can see why they were doing a lap of honour. I can see why the fans think this is amazing. The draw is absolutely sensational, and certain players are coming to the boil at just the right time. So, what else is going on, JD?
Well, yeah, those matches are decided. So Sterling and Kane, the 2-0 win, a 2-1 win for Ukraine over Sweden with Artem Dovbyk scoring that winner at Hampden Park. Rafa Benitez set to be confirmed today as Everton manager on a 3-year deal to replace Carlo Ancelotti at Goodison Park. No longer a small club when Rafa appears now in the Toffee Terraces. So obviously he won the Champions League with Liverpool 16 years ago. Novak Djokovic against Kevin Anderson at Wimbledon today. Disappointing to see Serena injure herself yesterday and have to retire on that slippy court. Andy Murray and Arnya Sabalenka also in action. We heard from Conor Murray yesterday at the Lions, talk about who he'd be leaning upon. But it was an assured press conference that I thought Conor Murray gave, having replaced Alan Wynne-Jones as captain. Leinster Under-20 Hurling Championship last night. Laois beat Westmeath 433 to 427. Antrim beating Down 317 to 113. Kildare getting the better of Carlow 123 to 316. Meath and Offaly contesting a minor championship final from last year, which spilled over into this year in Mullingar tonight at 7:30. Also, Leinster minor matches in hurling. Carlow Kildare at Cullen Park and Down Antrim and Portaferry. And flat racing at Tipperary today. First off at 4:40. And it's almost crept up on us. The Irish Open tomorrow, starting in Mount Juliet. So we'll look ahead to that in tomorrow's show.
Okay. Rory McIlroy out today saying that as a kid he managed to get all the way to the green on 18 when Tiger was winning the World Golf Championship, so close that he could have nicked the glove from Tiger's arse pocket, but he refrained from doing so. Which
I was there. I was at that. It was the same weekend Armagh won the All-Ireland football final. Sorry, Eoin.
Yeah. I mean, this has just been slander on Kerry and the Naughties for the last 5 minutes, hasn't it?
Hey, look, any opportunity always be closing. John, good stuff. Looking forward to the preview of the golf tomorrow. That's John Duggan's thoughts on the football this morning and everything else that's going on in the world as well. So did we do enough on Ukraine? Like in their remarkable last-minute win, was there any possibility it was offside? Did they just not check it for very long? It seemed like goal, absolutely. Celebrate this wildly. Kick it off there, lads. I mean, certainly in the Premier League it was offside.
Because the arm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The arm was playing.
The scoring part of your body.
It did look quite similar to the Harry Kane situation as well. And once the lines were brought out and shown retrospectively, it was clear that Harry Kane was substantially onside. I think it's fair to say. The refereeing in general has been top quality. I'm surprised that Andy Mitten as well said earlier that he's been getting texts off friends saying they're in and out of the competition. Because it's not one of the best Euros of all time.
And the round of 16 was sensational. Like, all-time high levels of drama where the supposed cannon fodder teams have won some big games. So all the group stage is just a waste because we're only going down to 16. It's like, nope, not having it. Absolutely perfect. Tournament's been brilliant. I disagree. Damien Delaney was on the other day. He's like, look, stick it all in one country. Let the festival take over. There is a bit of unfairness. He was kind of on the side of the Welsh who were very surprisingly complaining about something. It's very uncharacteristic, and I don't know. I think that this has worked out. Now the trip to Baku, not great, but like it's worse for the journalists and the fans covering or going because obviously the teams travel in slightly higher quality conditions than everybody else. So look, I don't know. Give us your thoughts. 087 9 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course you can always use the hashtag OTB AM. Okay, so we do have something that we need to bring you. It's a very special report. A French beef. Le roast beef est vrai.
Well, I don't like him, and I don't have to work with people I don't like.
Patrick Vieira is 6'4", so I want to go Gary Neville. He says, come and have a go at me.
You should have gone to Specsavers, Charlie.
Well, maybe you should go also then, Jet, because you couldn't see driving home the other night.
Don't you ever talk about me!
So I think with your arguments back and forward there, Tony, that's the point.
I'm wondering...
Just let me finish. Let me finish.
I'm let you finish. It's pure constipated.
You can forget about Sean Kavanagh as far as he's a man.
If you're going to be critical, then you've got to make sure you've got something to back it up with, don't you? Maybe the coaches were maybe panicking a little bit. To me, you've got to have a little bit of a better record than that. The beef is real.
To do a special Lions edition over the next little while. LeBron Gatlin, Sean O'Brien, beef is real.
You come with the king, you best not miss.
Yeah, exactly. That's something we better do over the next while. But as you say, le beef est vrai. Once again, this morning we did a Kylian Mbappe versus Olivier Giroud. Beef est vrai. A couple of weeks ago we were doing it once again on the French because the French are going to French, it turns out. As let's just like a couple of things from on the pitch. First of all, before we get into the off-the-pitch stuff, because the off-the-pitch stuff is where you're going to be getting your popcorn out. But on the pitch, a couple of ugly scenes from during the game, according to a number of reports. Get French Football News on Twitter, a great source for all of this. L'Équipe having a field day, RMC having a field day. It is a great time to be a member of the French media. So, the ugly scenes on the pitch. Rabiot and Pogba, they insulted each other apparently. Rabiot rather, unhappy with Pogba's defensive efforts. Varane insulted Pavard, unhappy with his defending, and Pavard blamed Pogba for doing no defending, and Varane later backed Pavard up. So you've got all these little factions developing in the dressing room. Of course, it doesn't matter until the whole thing blows up at the 2022 World Cup if Deschamps is still manager. But the big thing, and RMC were the first to report this yesterday, that there was a verbal battle that occurred between Véronique Rabiot, who is, of course, the mother of Adrien Rabiot, the French midfielder. So her and certain individuals close to Adrien Rabiot were on one side. And then in the other corner, you had, in the first instance, the Pogba family. So the two families exchanged words after the third goal for Switzerland. They were all in the stands. Véronique asked how Paul Pogba, one of the most expensive footballers in humankind's history, could lose the ball like that in the lead-up to the Swiss equaliser. She was desperately unhappy, had a go at the Pogbas and Pogba's entourage as a result of that. But at the full-time whistle, Véronique Rabiot, who is Adrien Rabiot's agent, by the way, who has represented him throughout his entire life, is a notoriously tough negotiator, is very, very hard to deal with. Obviously, he's moved around a couple of clubs. There's been a couple of complications to certain transfers in his career so far. His mother has sometimes been a part of those complications, let's just say. But at the full-time whistle, Véronique asked Kylian Mbappe's father to tell his son off so that he would be less arrogant. Advice on parenting always goes down well, I'm sure, a topic that's been covered on the Dadcast. She also took aim at certain journalists for the way they were sucking up to Mbappe. I mean, why wouldn't you want to suck up to Kylian Mbappe? Her fury continued after the penalty shootout, and she is then said to have asked Mbappe's father to, and I love this quote, to reframe his son and make him less arrogant. Now, I'm sure that the phrase reframe is just kind of getting lost in the translation I've done on RMC here, but I mean, it's just a fantastic quote. Reframe your son, make him less arrogant, Mr. Mbappe. And after the penalty miss, things went up another level as well. Véronique is said to have said, and this is from a journalist in L'Équipe, "It is embarrassing how he struck that for a player of his level. He hit it too lightly. I hope you were going to scold him." So, I guess, reframe him, make him less arrogant, scold him for hitting a penalty so weak. Those are your tips of parenting from Véronique Rabiot. Then there was an exchange between not only Mbappe's father and Véronique, but between Véronique and Mbappe's mother. And for about 20 minutes, she clashed with several families of players who were there in Bucharest. Other families were there to witness it. They were shocked by her attitude, the timing of it. Straight after the match, she was angry. She was taking out her anger on a couple of other family members. And there was a situation earlier in the match when security officers had to ask those close to Paul Pogba to calm down after they reacted aggressively and negatively to Rabiot's mistakes, in particular during the match. So that's what's happening on that front. The other story that's come out in the aftermath is that Kingsley Coman played with an injury, played on with it for no reason other than to try and change the public image of him in France. There's been this sense that he's a little bit too flaky, and he was injured, and he was like, I'm staying on because people think I'm a weakling.
Fair play, no? Like, you know, you got to dye your boots on for the country and nearly, you know, had a big impact.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I guess maybe he did. He hits the crossbar, and if that goes in under the crossbar, he's a hero, and he played through injury, and that's fantastic. But I don't know. This is obviously not connected to the last beef Israel we did about France in any way. But is it a totally independent thing? Was this just an unhappy camp? Was this just a bunch of miserable people who didn't know how good they had it by being at the top of the world in 2018? And let their empire crumble around them.
Yeah, it's a handy trophy they left behind them.
Yeah, they will look back on this tournament. They will look back at the winners of whoever comes out on top of this tournament as a team that they will feel they are better than. But we'll keep an eye on this for the next international game that France are playing in. Will Rabiot's mother and will the Mbappe clan and will the Pogba clan go toe to toe once again?
Right, that is this week's Beef is Real.
Well, I don't like them, and I don't have to work with people I don't like.
Patrick Vieira is 6'4", so that's having a go at Gary Neville. He says, come and have a go at me.
You should have gone to Specsavers, Charlie.
Well, maybe you should go also then, Jeff, because you couldn't see driving home the other night.
Don't you ever talk about me!
So I think your argument's back and forward there, Tony. That's the point.
I'm wondering...
Just let me finish. Let me finish.
I'm let you finish.
It's pure constipated.
Egan, forget about Sean Kavanagh as far as he's a man.
If you're going to be critical, then you've got to make sure you've got something to back it up with, don't you? Maybe the coaches were maybe panicking a little bit. To me, you've got to have a little bit of a better record than that.
The beef is real.
I don't know if anybody in world sport plays the comic book villain better than Warren Gatland, so it's good that he's on our side for a change. OTBSports.com, this is the headline for you. I'm not sure, maybe we don't have it for you right now. We'll come back to that. Yeah, we do. Andy Moran jumps to Mayo's defence after Frankie Dolan broadside. I'm looking forward to this.
More beef.
That's this week's Paddy and Andy football pod with Tommy Rooney. So just explain what Frankie Dolan did in the show yesterday on.
Frankie Dolan told the story of his life. He told the story of being a Roscommon footballer, and being a Roscommon footballer often involves being coached by people who aren't from Roscommon. People coming into that county and saying, we know better than you because you're Roscommon and we are from another county, which quite often is Mayo. John Mahon went into the dressing room after a game and he was managing Mayo, coming up against Roscommon, and he did the usual sort of commiserations on your loss, lads, and I guess Dolan wasn't overly happy with the tone that John Mahon took, and then John Mahon eventually becomes Roscommon manager and drops Frankie Dolan, and
through the
Dolan
press
finds out about it on Midwest Radio. And that's just part of the relationship he has with Mayo, but he's just got a little bit of a dislike for the way in which maybe the supporters think they are entitled to an All-Ireland title. Obviously haven't won an All-Ireland title in 70 years at this point, and they think he thinks that they believe that they are just entitled to it, that they're always complaining about things except for taking responsibility for their own actions on the field, for accepting that maybe Dublin have been the better team over the course of the last decade, for example, and other teams in previous decades. He feels that the buck stops at Mayo, and the Mayo people aren't willing to accept where the buck does indeed stop.
Right, and what about the Mayo fans?
Well, I mean, that's exactly what I mean. Like, it is the arrogance of those Mayo fans is what I mean. Sorry, this is nothing to do with like James Horan not accepting that the buck stops at Mayo. I'm sure he does. This is all to do with the Mayo support. This is all to do with being in stands around Mayo supporters and seeing that they do not accept that their team comes off second best sometimes. He feels that it is 70 years of heartbreak. It is based on a curse, that people still believe in the curse.
Stop making excuses that there was a curse in the team. That's nothing got to do with not beating Dublin in Croke Park. The fans in All-Ireland final day are always coming up with excuses. Maybe Mayo were the better team on some of those days, but you have to have the balls to go and win an All-Ireland.
That was the key line. Forgot about that.
So, the beef is absolutely real between Mayo and Roscommon, and maybe we'll get the chance to see it. I don't know. Roscommon obviously up against Galway this weekend. The news in the papers today is that Damien Comer is going to be fit to take his place. Love Island going for a Belgium-themed, Manchester United-themed Horny Devils. They've dressed the women as Red Devils.
Right, is that it?
Is it Euros? Is it trying to steal the viewers?
Roberto Martinez.
Have you not...
fingerprints all over that.
You're not going to give us a daily update, are you?
No, well, I might dip into it later on today because there's no Euros, obviously.
Fewest viewers for launch in 4 years. Apparently the show is in crisis.
Right. Well, I mean, like, what I found remarkable about Love Island is that 2 years ago, I was looking at this the other day, their average viewing figures were, I think, 5.7 million, which is an extraordinary number when you think about it. It goes on for 8 weeks. It's on 6 nights of the week. Like, I mean, that is just incredible that they managed to hold that figure for a show that should really fizzle out. But as we all know, 2019 was just this unbelievable summer of drama on that television show, and we will never forget it, Ger, will we?
What happened?
That was the year of the Maura Higgins arrival, the multiple different fights, I'm trying to think of specifics now, people's names. I don't know the
Greg
people's
O'Shea?
names. There was Greg O'Shea won it, sorry, yeah.
Even I know that. And OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We have Colm Buig with us to talk tennis. Colm, good morning to you.
Morning, sir. Morning, Eoin.
You're a Red Devil. Were you watching the horny Red Devils last night on Love Island?
No, I was commiserating myself in the fact that we've lost Serena Williams in Wimbledon in the first round, in the first set, midway through it. Just to give you an immediate segue into the tennis chat.
There's every year there's a gathering of the 1972 Miami Dolphins to drink champagne whenever the last unbeaten team in the NFL finally gets beaten because they were the only team that won the whole thing and went unbeaten during their season. So I always imagine in my head every time Serena gets knocked out at the moment that Margaret Court is sitting somewhere like Cruella de Vil. Anytime Serena loses at this stage.
Yeah, it's. I think Margaret Court can rest easy now because I think her 24 is safe in the bank, in the vault, not to be beaten for a long time. Because as we've been saying, lads, for the last 2 years on OTB AM, talking about all these slams, is we're saying Serena Williams, Wimbledon, that's her thing. And of course, there was no Wimbledon last year with coronavirus because Wimbledon had pandemic insurance, so it was the only Grand Slam that wasn't played. So we're back after a 2-year hiatus. Serena will turn 40 in September. And you thought, well, this is where she's won her most of the 23 Grand Slams. She's won 7 at Wimbledon. And this year, the field is so open. The defending champion, Simona Halep, who beat Serena 2 years ago in the final, she withdrew injured. Of course, there's no Naomi Osaka. Petra Kvitova lost in the first round. She's a 2-time champion. So open. You know, the world number 1 is Ash Barty. She's won 1 slam. That was 2 years ago at the French Open. You know, as far as world number 1s go, she's not very convincing, in my opinion. You could have backed Serena. Now, at the end of the day, you have to win 7 matches in 2 weeks, and it's a big, big task, which Serena hasn't done since the 2017 Australian Open when she beat her sister Venus while pregnant, without knowing she's pregnant. And since she's come back, she's been to 4 Slam finals and lost them all convincingly. But there was this magic in the air, the same way there is at Roger Federer, that you never know. It's Wimbledon. It's been a truncated season. It's a mad world we live in. Could Serena do it? And then this happens halfway through the first set against Alexandra Sasnovich in centre court. Serena slips, and she slipped at the exact same place that Adrian Mannarino slipped in the previous match in centre court against Federer, where Mannarino then had to withdraw injured at the start of the 5th set. That match was going the distance. Federer hadn't lost the first round Grand Slam match since the 2003 French Open, weeks before his first of 20 Grand Slams. And Serena follows Mannarino in slipping in the exact same part of centre court. Andy Murray was tweeting about it, saying the courts are very wet this year. He played the first round, he won. And Serena gets up, tries to continue, and starts crying as she's serving because she knows she can't. And she has to slowly walk towards the net and withdraw. And look, it falls in 2 ways here, and I was thinking about it last night. Look, if you're a big tennis fan, it's still a brilliant side of the draw because literally 25 to 30 women could win like Wimbledon. They really could. I mean, in the last 17 slams contested, there have been 13 different winners. It's anybody's. But at the same time, slams need Serena. Serena Williams has to stick around for at least the start of maybe the second week, the 4th round quarterfinal, because tennis struggles to attract casual sport fans at the best of times. Wimbledon is a showpiece event. Serena is one of the 4 worldwide recognizable tennis names, and she's the only one on the women's side because Osaka's not playing Wimbledon. So it's really, really bad for the tournament. Serena going out this early. And of course, it's really bad for Serena.
Yeah, and look, you need the rivalry, and we haven't yet got a rivalry to match any of the great rivalries that built the women's game. There's no Chris Evert versus Navratilova. There's no Steffi Graf versus a bunch of other people at various stages. And it feels like it needs someone to dominate and somebody to get close to that dominance, which is kind of the key to why any casual sports fan getting into a sport.
100%, yeah. And I think Naomi Osaka can do that. I mean, she's already one of the great hardcourt players. All 4 of her slams have been on hardcourt, 2 at the Australian Open and 2 at the US Open, but she hasn't made any dent really at the French Open or Wimbledon. And of course, as I say, she's not playing this year and she pulled out of French Open, and we know she has bigger issues than tennis. But outside of Osaka, yeah, there hasn't been anybody dominant. I mean, look, lads, we were only talking, was it 2 weeks ago, about Barbora Krejcikova winning the French Open. Barely anybody had heard of her at the start of the French Open. She literally just played her first ever Wimbledon singles match, just there, which she won, thankfully. So that's how open it is. And as you say, yeah, there isn't really any rivalry. There is no Nadal, Djokovic, Federer on the women's side. But if you're a tennis fan, it's still great because you just can't predict who's going to win the women's side. And there are still brilliant matches. But you need that transcendent star. You know, you need someone to grab onto. And in the absence of Serena, the question is who's that's going to be. Is it going to be Osaka, or will someone else emerge and take that slot?
How is your own game, Colm?
My own game? I started playing again. Are you talking about me playing tennis now?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I started playing back during COVID, having not played for years, and very enjoyable. Yeah, very enjoyable. I backed myself to do something, but can't get anyone to play me, really. So
it's like
that's what I did.
Like a top-class fighter. People are just running scared of Colm Buig.
We need an OTB ladder.
Where can people go to watch you play?
Court 12 at Wimbledon. I haven't got any of the show cards yet. It's very upsetting. I actually play in Herbert Park in Dublin. You can rent courts there for an hour. €6 per adult.
Posh.
I'd recommend anyone do it.
I was new.
€6 per adult. That's what.
€6 per adult. It's very, very reasonable.
Half a pint in that part of Dublin.
I take the full pint. But you know, it's essentially €12. You're not going to pay yourself.
That's pretty good. Venus did win, and look, this is Venus winding down her career. She's not a contender in any of these slams. It's been a long time since we've thought of her as a contender, but certainly keeping the family name out there.
No, it's cool. I mean, who would have bet that Venus would have gone further than Serena? She's 41 years old. She's actually a 5-time winner at Wimbledon. Her first was all the way back in 2000. But yeah, she beat Buzz Arnescu in the first round. And it's great to see, yeah, because actually speaking of show cards and outside cards, she was put on court number 3, I think, which isn't great for a 5-time Wimbledon champion. No. She should be given a show card place. I mean, you had, say, Alexander Zverev played, very comfortable, nothing first round match in centre court where he won in straight sets. That should have been Venus. And the other intrigue about her too is that she's playing mixed doubles with Nick Kyrgios at this Wimbledon. So
with who?
She's brilliant in herself. With Nick Kyrgios.
Your buddy.
Playing, yeah, the tennis player. Yeah, Nick Kyrgios.
We haven't had you on since Nick Kyrgios gave you a shout out for your stag.
I know, yeah, it was great. Wouldn't expect anything less from Nick. Actually, the lads were telling me that the lads who booked it were saying that you pay for the message to come through and you write the script.
No,
right?
Nick Kyrgios is not taking pocket money from people on the far side of the world to send a phone message to people.
Listen to this, right? So they wrote the script and they sent it to him, and you pay up in full, and if the video doesn't come back before a certain time, you get a full refund. But the lads are telling me that Kyrgios sent the video with exactly 1 minute to spare, which is very on brand for Kyrgios.
What was your emotion when you saw Nick Kyrgios describe you as his favourite member of Team OTB?
No, he said one of his favourites, which I was disappointed with.
Are you sure? But it certainly, my recollection was it was like, oh, you're my favourite.
Yeah, it seemed like a little bit biased.
Yeah, I know that he does watch regularly, but I was suspicious that he wasn't paying attention because I don't think I presented anything. And he said I'm one of his favourite presenters. So that was upsetting, that attention to detail. But the sentiment was right, and that's all that matters.
Generally quite a positive thing to say, though. It's almost as if somebody close to you slipped him €150 or something.
Well, I just revealed that, Eoin. we can move on from that. But I thought the funniest part was, with 60 seconds to spare, he submitted the video. But he's involved in a classic at the moment. He's halfway through his 5-set match with Ugo Ambert on court 1. And it's a brilliant match, actually. But like most people in Ireland couldn't see that match because of the rain delays. The first 2 days actually have been really unseasonably wet, even by Wimbledon standards. There's so many matches delayed, and it went beyond the BBC coverage. So you would need access to BBC iPlayer to have seen Kyrgios play.
Get now VPN.
Yes, VPN access is what you need. But thankfully, that will resume this morning or early afternoon, maybe, and they'll see out that final set. But I was reading about it, and Kyrgios won the fourth set 6-1 and had unbelievable stats like 95% first serves in and 100% second serve points won. Incredible stats for a guy who hasn't picked up a racket in 5 months. Is, as I said many times, his natural talent is something else. He just can't find any consistency.
Djokovic is going to win this now from this point forward, and it's really about us kind of grimly watching him become the winningest Grand Slam tennis man of all time.
Yeah, but who said it was grim? Yeah, I mean, if he gets it, he'll deserve it, won't he? It'll be 20-20-20. It'll be perfectly tied up. Well, he actually lost his first set against Jack Draper in the first round on Monday, 19-year-old from Sutton, in England. Michael Verney thought I was talking about Sutton in Dublin, but no, Sutton in England. And he took the first set off Djokovic, and Djokovic went on to win in 4. Yeah, I mean, look, the only way that Djokovic is going to lose is if he defeats himself, like he did at last year's US Open and gets disqualified. He's untouchable. Especially because the man he just beat at the French Open final, Stefanos Tsitsipas, he's gone already. He lost in his first round very easily. He was completely down. And Roger Federer needed 5 sets, as I said. Andy Murray got through in 4 sets, but should have won in 3 sets. And then you're looking at the likes of Daniil Medvedev, Alexander Zverev.
Yeah, not going to do it.
Maybe Matteo Berrettini, but like, no, this is all Djokovic. And lads, like, this will be momentous. You should watch it. You should love it. It'll be 20-20-20 in less than 2 weeks' time.
Exactly. The last time we had a conversation about Novak Djokovic on this show, it went down a storm with our YouTube viewers.
People loved it.
The top comment described the old guy as salty, so I'm not sure which of the three of us that particular commenter was talking about.
No, I think it was confirmed. I think they helpfully pointed out where in the grid the aforementioned old person was, so it's fine.
Who cares about Australian Open? Really? My brain can't recover from that sentence, continued Michael Pearson.
Nobody cares about the Australian Open.
No, don't double down.
Barely even a major until like the 90s.
Oh, don't double down. We won't put this part out.
Honestly, like, no marks used to win it and be like, wouldn't even get a line in the papers.
No, it's one of the 4 Grand Slams. It's 20-20-20. Federer and Nadal win Australian Opens, and when they win it, sure, you give them all the praise.
This
is a vendetta against Djokovic.
Here's another one. Gary Miller. Who really cares about the Australian Open? You, sir, are a real piece of work. It is one of the 4 majors. Every single professional tennis player cares about it. You should cover men's curling.
I mean, nothing wrong with a bit of men's curling, I
agree.
Yeah, we should. Yeah.
Maybe they had actually have 4 proper majors.
Constructive feedback in the YouTube comments. I'm all about it.
This old guy is buying into these negatives, false media narratives about Djokovic. They're all lies. These are, you versus the internet.
Let's hear his latest thoughts on the vaccine. Let's hope that he gets asked by, in one of those very difficult press conferences about how he thinks that's going. Let's see him show a bit of leadership as opposed to doing all the things that he's done, giving out about equal pay for the women, having a tournament in the middle of COVID, being in a nightclub when COVID is absolutely rampant. Giving people cause for vaccine hesitation. If that's your hero column, you're welcome.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
No, I mean, look, there are 2 sides to everybody, and you're not talking about the good sides of Djokovic. First of all, him as a tennis player, and secondly, and this is a lot of sources say he's one of the kindest and most generous players on tour, and is always helping out the other players. Always whining about the hotels. Oh, we've got to stay in this 5-star hotel. I can't believe it. It's terrible. That's helping the players. In his own way, that's helping the players. He's trying to get better conditions
it's
for
helping
everyone.
them all seem like assholes, and he's certainly good at that.
No, I mean, I'm just going to have to firmly disagree with you. That's okay.
You are as entitled to be wrong as anybody else on this show, Colin. That's
what. Let us know your comments about the old guy in the comments below. Text us.
0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course, as Eoin has helpfully pointed out, you can leave a comment in the YouTube channel. Colin, good stuff. We'll talk to you again real soon. Cheers.
All right, see you.
It's Colin Buig. Wrong about the tennis this week, and he'll be wrong about the tennis next week as well when we get him back on too. Let me tell you about what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. No Euro show today. They're back on Friday with Eamon Dunphy. They needed to draw the curtains house private after England's win against Germany last night. OTB Gold, Chris Waddle at 1 o'clock. Mount Rushmore is Wexford from 3. Our retro panel is Structure versus Spontaneity, and OTB Gold is Paul McGrath talking about the Charlton era. We're back talking football with Nathan and Phil after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
During that game in Munich last week, I got a text off one of Pogba's family, and it just said, different animal. He doesn't feel the pressure for France, feels the absolute competence of his manager. That's not to say he doesn't have a good relationship with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at United.
And they played the style football, which has made, Italians stand up and be entertained. And instead, Mancini has wanted everyone to have fun, train with music on.
For the best Euro 2020 coverage, download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the OTB Football Podcast.
First up, a Go Loud original from Newstalk.
Get all the news you need to start your day with First Up, the podcast that brings you stories, analysis and interviews with the top newsmakers. First Up, available each weekday morning from 7 a.m. on Go Loud.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
Why not check out the Boyle Sports betting app for the latest betting and stats on every player and team with the Boyle Sports Euro Stats Centre. Rated 4.5 stars on the App Store, you'll find all our latest odds and offers for the Euros. So remind us where to go, Stevie G.
Boyle Sports. This is betting.
18 plus, bet responsibly, gamblingcare.ie.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna auto mower.
Auto mower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna auto mower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It's coming Rome, Ghostbusters, it's coming Rome again, and that was about the Telegraph. Now we can believe, says the London Times. Redemption is the headline on the London Independent, and Southgate's redemption is the headline on the Eye as well. So that's how the English back pages are covering England's triumph against Germany yesterday. How are their front pages covering it on?
A lot of Harry Kane on a lot of the front pages. We're seeing Eye has Harry Kane in the front. The Daily Telegraph definitely have Harry Kane in the front. Metro have Harry Kane in the front. The Times have Harry Kane in the front. You'd be wondering whether or not Raheem Sterling was actually playing yesterday. The Sun have Raheem Sterling on the front of the newspaper. 55 years of hurt never stopped us. Raheeming is the front page of the English Sun this morning. The Mirror at least have him in a little picture of him as well. But one of the princes on the front of the Daily Mail gets a bigger picture than Raheem Sterling. Gets the same treatment as Harry. It's weird, isn't it? That's especially weird. The prince clapping, it's one of the little princes. I don't even know their names. It's George, is it? It's one of William's kids. Well, it's probably George, right? They're all George. There's a 50% chance. I've never seen The Crown, but I know they're all called George. It's just a number afterwards that it's hard to remember. The jinx, it's all over, says the front of the Metro. England don't lose to Germany is the headline of the Daily Star. Historic souvenir edition, and it's actually just people throwing beer over their heads, which is kind of perfect, right? That's actually it's not from the match. It's just fans drinking. It's just a picture of fans drinking going mad. It is like that moment in, I'd imagine when they went 2-0 up, in the Christmas edition of The Office when David Brent is backstage and the woman throws a drink at him and he goes to throw a drink at her and then she just spills it on him and she's like, yeah, joke's actually on you because I was already wet. That's all the England fans turning around to each other being like, I'm already wet. Doesn't matter. You can throw another pint on me. Does not matter. We've got Phil and Nathan with us. Phil, good morning to you. Nathan, how are you?
How's it going?
Phil, what did you make of it?
I think England are approaching things very defensively. Obviously, they haven't conceded yet. And there's a very good chance they could reach a final and without having to get out of second or third gear, because it's going to be conservative. I think now anyone that's calling for the likes of Foden and Grealish to all be included in the same team, it just can't really bring that conversation up anymore, because this is the approach that Gareth Southgate's going to use. Saying that, you would imagine Mason Mount comes back into the team, and probably Saka would drop out and he could revert back to a back four against Ukraine. But yeah, it's not pretty. I think out of the last 16 ties, apart from the fact obviously it was England-Germany and all the history around the fixture, it was probably the worst of the last 16 ties. But England won't care. They're in a quarter-final against Ukraine, win that to play Denmark or Czech Republic, and they're in a final at Wembley.
Yeah.
The dream is alive.
Everybody's dream. What did you make of this whole thing, Nathan, and the aftermath? Because Germany certainly had some chances. Pickford makes a good save, and obviously there's the Muller miss. England took their chances. I mean, Harry Kane's chance before half-time, because there was nothing else to talk about in the first half, essentially, was analysed to death. It wasn't the amazing chance that, certainly on the BBC, they were making out. Those lads never missed, obviously. But I think the two sides were pretty evenly matched. And in cup knockout football, the team that takes their chances wins.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. I do think Harry Kane's chance in the first half was a very good opportunity for a player of Harry Kane's quality that he should have taken. And if he's in the form of his life, he probably does take. But in a game against Germany in a knockout stage, it's always going to be incredibly tight. And England are pretty dull to watch, and they're going to bore their way to victory. But teams have done that at major tournaments since time began. Portugal did it 5 years ago, and it works. So it doesn't seem as though they're going to be here for our entertainment over the course of this tournament. But they've entertained us plenty over the years in the way they have fallen apart. So I'm sure Gareth Southgate has looked at that. He has obviously focused on their weaknesses, which is the defence, has done everything in his power to protect that back three or back four, whatever it is he's playing. And he has sacrificed some of the attacking talent, but they're squeezing through games. If Thomas Muller scores that, yes, it's a totally different conversation. But every team gives up chances. I've seen some of the analysis that they are still open at the back. Look at the way Germany created those chances. Every team is going to get a couple of chances during a game. It was a bad individual error by Sterling to let him through, but he missed it, and England took advantage. And they couldn't have asked to be in a better position heading into the quarterfinals, where they've survived their injuries to Henderson in particular, and Maguire is back playing again and looking very solid at the back. And Gareth Southgate's got pretty much everything right. I wouldn't be surprised if he did change it against Ukraine, and if he brought Grealish back in or brought Foden back in and Mount, that if he went to a back four, maybe took Trippier or Shaw out of the side and put Mount in there, and then took Saka out and played Grealish. I think they'll expect to have a lot more of the ball against Ukraine again, and will want that bit of creativity that a Foden or Grealish will bring. And it's not, I was saying last night, like a lot of people, I enjoy watching England and the hype and everything around them. And this is a very likeable bunch of players. By the time the BBC coverage was wrapping up, well, did it ever wrap up even during the Ukraine-Sweden match? I was like, no. But this is what tournament football is about. It reminded me a lot of, say, our post-match analysis of the night Ireland beat Italy. There was nothing wrong with that performance at all that night. We're going through 1 to 11. What outstanding individual performances these Irish players had put in, what they had done through their careers that got them into this position, that they could produce a win like this. And you do lose the run of yourself, and you're allowed to use the run of yourself, and England is allowed to lose the run of themselves, and it'll annoy the hell out of us, but off with them.
Look, tournament football is about going crazy for no particular reason, right? It's overreaction Monday every day.
Yeah, and that's why we love it. That's what separates it from club football, that you have an entire nation, half of whom are just probably taking an interest last night. They've beaten Germany. They know the history about Germany, the heartbreak that they've had since 1966, inflicted by Germany. And then to go and get a win like that, they're perfectly entitled to lose the run of themselves. And particularly when they look at a draw where you have to beat Ukraine, which, if Ukraine were to beat England in the quarterfinal, would be one of the all-time great shocks at a European Championship, probably since Iceland beat England 5 years ago. And then either the Czech Republic or Denmark, and as much momentum as there is behind Denmark, and as much as I think Denmark could cause them a lot of problems, they are without their best player. Like, Christian Eriksen was still the X factor in that team. He's not there. They have a couple of other issues as well. So now, very quickly, when the hangover starts to wear off today for the England fans and the pundits, now the expectation begins, and that's a far more difficult thing for Southgate to try and manage.
Was there a change, Phil, after the first 15 minutes or so? Did you notice, like, Germany on the front foot immediately, and then all of a sudden it looked like, okay, England can actually completely dull this thing down? Did something shift, or was that just a random opening to the game?
I think that's just the way the game opened up. It was a bit similar at the start of the second half, where Germany controlled things. Obviously, Germany, it suited them to have a slower tempo to the game in terms of controlling with possession, but that also suited England because they were able to set up defensively and plug any gaps. And the Kyle Walker being part of the back three obviously allows that pace to recover any mistakes. And when you've got two protectors in there like Rice and Phillips, who both picked up yellow cards yesterday, but you saw even when Goretzka got through, who fouled him? It was Declan Rice, and he did it in a way that he picked up a yellow and they survived that. And I know there's been a lot of people looking at Declan Rice saying, what does he offer with the ball? But he offers a lot more with the ball when he plays for West Ham. He's been asked to play this way for England. Then you just felt as the game wore on and England kind of grew into it, that they had the beating of Germany in certain areas of the pitch where they had, like, Sterling was a threat for most of the afternoon, as he has been for most of the tournament. I'm surprised he isn't on the front of most of the papers, because he has been their star man at the Euros. He's scored 3 of the 4 goals. Kane took his goal very well, but for the first half an hour of the game, Harry Kane had 2 touches in the match. Now, there's been an argument about Harry Kane. He's not getting the supply, but he has to get involved as well. And he just looks like a player who isn't fit. And he often rushes back from injury and scores a few goals, and everyone thinks, he's back, he's hit the ground running again. But then a few weeks kick in and he starts to look sluggish again. So the positive there is, he played another game yesterday, so that should bring him on. Jordan Henderson came on. Harry Maguire played, had a really good game. So they have been very fortunate. They haven't picked up any injuries. And the way they play, obviously they were missing the 2 players yesterday through the isolation. Mount was an option on the bench. But they don't play the most attritional game, so they're not picking up any muscular injuries either.
The mention of Sterling and the end of the season, like I certainly didn't think that he was going to be an automatic starter at the start of this tournament, given how badly he finished the season for Manchester City. Although at the moment that he needed something, Pep Guardiola turned to him. He didn't get it, but he turned to him. Where is Raheem Sterling right now? If you're Daniel Levy and the phone is ringing and they're saying, we'll give you Sterling and money for Harry Kane, are you thinking about that, Nathan? Are you thinking, actually, you know what, maybe I will take that guy?
If you're going to get rid of Harry Kane anyways, I think yes, then absolutely, because there's no other way a player of Raheem Sterling's quality goes to a club like Tottenham. He's too good, he wins too much, he can go to any top club around Europe. And he's had a dip, and he had some sort of a falling out with Pep Guardiola that meant he wasn't a factor for Manchester City towards the end of the season. But what he has done consistently over the space of, it's hard to believe it's 7 years since he was part of that Liverpool side that nearly went and won the title. He has been among the best players in English football. And for all the talk at the start of this tournament around Gareth Southgate not knowing his best 11, I think in that first match against Croatia, he played 9 of the players that played in his last World Cup qualifier, and the other 2 were injury enforced. So he stuck with the players, and Sterling in particular, it's 15 and 21 now for England. Sterling has always delivered for England. And he may have had a slight dip in confidence, but when he's at his best and he's running at defences and he's causing havoc, he is amongst the best players in the Premier League. There is something about Raheem Sterling that the English papers can't get behind. The fact that he's not on the front pages, that he's not on all the back pages, maybe, again, there's a greater conversation around English football and their relationship with the media and Raheem Sterling's relationship with the media. But this is an unbelievable story. I know they keep going on about it on the BBC. He grew up in the shadow of Wembley. He could see Wembley from his school every single day. And to go from there and all the pressure he had as a young kid, moving to Liverpool at a young age, the expectation that he's had to deal with throughout his career, to go from that to delivering at a tournament like this on home soil to score 3 goals, all the important matches, is one of the great achievements that an English player has managed in recent times. So I think he deserves all the credit that is coming his way. There's probably not enough credit coming his way. And yeah, if Tottenham get a chance to sign him, absolutely. And if Grealish comes, like, where does he fit in? Is he happy at this stage of his career to sit around and play half the games? You kind of hope he wouldn't be. I mean, he's still only 26.
Sterling or Grealish?
Yeah. Sterling.
It is pretty young, all right. He played in the game against Iceland. Kyle Walker played in the game against Iceland. Harry Kane played in the game against Iceland, and a bunch of them are on the bench as well. Stones and Jordan Henderson, and Marcus Rashford actually comes off the bench that day as well. So within this team, there is enough of an understanding of how bad it will get if they were to, for example, lose against Ukraine in the next round. And I think that makes this a dangerous team.
Ukraine were shattered at the end of the match last night, and I thought they were probably the poorest team in their group. They somehow managed to scrape through ahead of North Macedonia.
Sorry, my point was that there's a rump of English players who understand how bad the fallout will be if they lose against Ukraine. So
and
the lap of honour,
they will do everything to avoid that.
Yeah,
and they've got the perfect manager now. Like, Roy Hodgson was not a good international manager. He embarrassed himself that night when they got beaten by Iceland. And Gareth Southgate, the one thing he has is a very cool head in his shoulders. And as he said in his post-match interview, he had to go in and be the party pooper in the dressing room and say, this is sort of worthless if somehow we get shocked over the next few matches. So I don't think they're going to lose the run of themselves. Instead, they are, it seems, quite a likeable bunch who understand the importance of international football. For all the money they're earning at their clubs, this still means a huge amount to them. They've got good leaders there in the likes of Jordan Henderson, who I know there's been questions why he's been even in the squad.
I think he's going to play the next game, or he's got a chance to play in the next game.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think that's the thing with Southgate. He will make changes again. He will try and keep them fresh. He will change the system. He might bring in a Grealish to try and have a little bit more creativity in there. So all of those things are a possibility. And I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Henderson make his way into this team over the next couple of games.
Yeah, Phil, what do you think?
Well, obviously the game's in Rome, so the Jack Grealish cam won't be as effective. Obviously, every time that the camera panned to him when he was sitting on the bench, there was a huge roar from the Wembley crowd. You'd imagine the only England fans that are going to be in Rome on Saturday are going to be English people that live in Italy. Well, I'm sure there'll be a few that will be able to make their way from other parts of Europe as well. But yeah, I think he will go back to the 4. Obviously, we know Ukraine tend to go with a 4-3-3. So will he stick with, will Southgate revert back to that? And then he likes Mason Mount. I'd say he thought long and hard about playing Mason Mount yesterday, but he probably had an out with the fact that he'd been isolating with Ben Chilwell, so it wasn't that controversial that he left him out. Regardless of what team Southgate picks, there's always going to be people questioning it, but I think as this tournament is progressing, people have just started to accept, just leave Gareth Southgate alone in terms of his team selection. You can criticise it all you like, but this is what he's going to do, and it might be the most exciting, but there's a very good chance England could definitely get to a final. And if they're in a final at Wembley, who knows? There was parts of the game yesterday where I thought actually the home crowd can work against them as well. The odd time a ball was passed backwards and there was a few groans. It wasn't until they actually got the first goal, when Sterling scores, then the atmosphere is electric, and you see Declan Rice trying to get the crowd G'd up. At one stage, Jordan Pickford comes out and claims the ball, and he's on the ground and he's screaming at the crowd even though he's on the ground. So they use it to their advantage when they have something to hold on to. But definitely it can be flipped the other way in a semi-final at Wembley. You could definitely turn the crowd, not against them, but certainly add a bit of pressure. The beauty for England is all the others are picking each other off, and England are just sauntering along nicely. They have Ukraine in the quarterfinal. I think watching the game last night, Sweden are a far better team, and I thought if Sweden get through, they'll give England a good test. Ukraine go through. Now you're thinking Denmark, Czech Republic. Denmark are a better team than Czech Republic. The Czechs could end up taking Denmark out, and then England have a semi-final against the Czechs, who they've already beaten. And who knows who they face in the final, because you've obviously got Italy, Belgium and Spain on the other side of the draw.
We just don't know with the pressure, Ger, though. Like, it is ramping up now, and as an England manager and England players, you're always walking along the edge of a cliff in terms of where the pressure and the intensity and the criticism is going to come from. Look, you mentioned time last night. They went to town on Harry Kane. Absolutely went to town on Harry Kane at halftime last night, and maybe deservedly so. But imagine if they're in a semi-final and they're playing the Czech Republic and it's scoreless at halftime, and you've Jadon Sancho sitting on the bench, you've Jack Grealish sitting on the bench, Phil Foden sitting on the bench. Dominic Calvert-Lewin didn't even make the squad last night. So he does have an incredible array of attacking talent that he's choosing not to use, which is fine when you're winning. But if England don't go on and reach a final now, this fallout will be just as severe as what happened against Iceland 5 years ago.
I don't think it will. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think because, look, maybe if they get beaten 2-0 by Ukraine, maybe at that stage. But I think that what they've done in beating Germany, there's enough sign of progress. He's still essentially young in international management, in management terms, and the World Cup is breathing down our neck. I think that's the big thing, is that, like, imagine another 18 months of Grealish finally playing Champions League football, for example, and everybody understanding that he is as good as he is. Made the comparison earlier on with John Barnes in the '86 World Cup, how Barnes becomes the dominant player in English football over the next couple of years when he gets his move to a big club and is playing alongside genuinely class players. I think that this England team is on the verge of something very, 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 very impressive.
I don't know I think if they didn't win this tournament, I could see Southgate getting a lot of criticism, because you would have a lot of the British press saying, here he has some of the greatest attacking players we've had in a long time, and he didn't use them. So I think the only way he escapes criticism if he wins the tournament or gets to a final and it's a valiant effort and they get beaten by a Belgium or Italy.
That's probably what's going to happen, though, isn't it?
Well, I mean, as I said, like, Belgium are obviously number one ranked team in the world, but De Bruyne is an injury doubt, Hazard's an injury doubt, their back three isn't great. Obviously, Lukaku is somebody that caused some problems. Italy, we've talked about Italy enough in this tournament that they don't have any stars, but they have a great team. But did they hit the ground running too early? Will they run out of steam? Spain, we know, like to own the ball, but they don't have a striker that's going to be clinical, because Morata misses too many chances. And again, they leave themselves open at the back. So it's not a guarantee. A one-off game at Wembley in a final would be a massive occasion for England, and they'd have a chance, certainly.
We're saying that that's where this is going. They're going to the final.
Think about it, Ger. Monday, July 12th. The parade through London. Prince George is going to be there.
I didn't know what parade you were talking about.
Kate is going to be there. As Emma Dunphy said, Boris will be front and centre. Millions of people, no masks on, as the England team go straight through, celebrating their European Championship win. That is what's coming your way.
Wow, be nice.
I think I predicted England to win a couple of times on this show. So, sure, look, maybe it's an emotional hedge. I want to play you both. You Phil, if you've got 2 minutes to stick around for this, I think you'll be an interested participant in this. We've got a clip that we want to play. This is Frankie Dolan, Roscommon legend, telling it like it is on the show yesterday. Have a listen.
I think the field are entitled to win Sam Maguire, and no one is entitled to win Sam Maguire. You have to put in a massive effort, not just over a year or two, but over a long period of time. And Mayo had their chances over the last couple of years against Dublin, and they just didn't take it. And I was at these games, and I was with people in Croke Park, surrounded by Mayo people, and they never sort of said that Dublin is a great team. It was always something was against them, whether it be a referee's call or, an umpire's call or something like that. You know what I mean? And I don't, and the Mortimers be the same. To be saying we should be winning these games, and you got to go and win them. They had the chances. They had chances all over the years, all over the last 20 years to win the odd All-Ireland here and there, and they never took it.
And you feel that there's just not a sense of responsibility that they take upon themselves after those games?
Well, I'm just talking about, I don't know the current Mayo players, but I'm just talking about, say, the fans on All-Ireland final day. They're always coming up with excuses. That, they'll never say that Dublin were the better team. Maybe Mayo were the better team on the day, but they didn't beat them. And you got to go and have the balls to go and win All-Ireland. And You know, stop making excuses that there was a curse put on the team from 100 years ago or something like that. You know, that has nothing got to do with not beating Dublin in Croke Park.
Nathan, no balls, the curse, excuses, the umpires. What's going on?
There's an old saying around Mayo that you can never beat the Rossies by enough. You can never beat them by enough. God, I hope that they go and beat Galway at the weekend and get themselves back in a Connacht final again, where we'll hear the Roscommon fans have their usual old excuses about why it didn't happen for them on Connacht final day. It was a bit too cold down by the graveyard end for them. Dear God. I think Mayo fans have given Dublin plenty of respect down through the years. I would acknowledge they're the greatest team we have ever seen. And if that's Frankie's experience, that's Frankie's experience. Maybe he should have given his ticket on All-Ireland final day to a Mayo supporter.
Oh, no, sure. He wouldn't miss Mayo getting beaten. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know if James Horan is a pin it up in the dressing room kind of guy, but maybe he should be sending that podcast around. We've taken Owen's Yera-ism to a whole new level to distract from what's going on in Kerry and the greatness of David Clifford.
No.
The one-way path to an All-Ireland final and finally dethroning this great Dublin side. He's trying to stir something up in the West to rattle Mayo. Well, it won't work, Sheahan.
He came to me with the offer, and I just could not turn it down. And I was like, "Yes, Frankie, we will go forth with this narrative." It's something that like, I mean, I think I said on the show before as well, and there was a natural blowback, and Frankie's getting a bit of blowback from it, calling it disrespectful and all that. The Mayo fans don't like to be criticised, Nathan.
Take criticism any day of the week, as long as it's valid criticism.
This seems pretty valid, though, no?
What's valid about it?
You just show up expecting you're going to win All Irelands.
Well, what, you want us to roll over like most other teams do when they get to All Ireland final day? No, turn up with a bit of confidence. Expect to win. Go toe to toe with the greatest team of all time. Phil, 2 own goals in an All Ireland final, Ger. Where has this ever happened before?
Come on. Phil, you're an honest broker in all this. I think you're married to a Mayo woman, is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's become a customary part of All Ireland final day where after the game, if I'm working at the game, I pack up my equipment and I go and I meet my wife and her friends after the game and I console them and I say, wasn't to be this year, but I tell you something, you gave me a bit of a scare this year. For a second, I thought this one could be going to a replay.
And did they generally blame the umpire at that point?
To be honest, usually when I walk in, they just look and go, "Oh, look, here he is, look, gloating." I don't gloat.
Listen, I'm not taking anything from Sheahan. 40 years on, Kerry are still shiting on about Seamus Darby's goal. Give us a break. Listen, Mayo people will apologise to no one for going up, for playing in All-Ireland final after All-Ireland final, for enjoying it, for enjoying the day, for pushing teams to the pin of their collar, and if it doesn't happen, respecting the winning team as they have done consistently with Dublin and acknowledge that this Dublin team are a great team.
Because does that respect come from a lack of balls that Frankie was saying?
What?
I mean, should he be a little bit more disrespectful? Should he be a bit more disrespectful?
Paddy and Andy are probably recording later. Why don't you go on to the podcast and tell Andy Moore he doesn't have balls?
They've already recorded. Paddy.
All right, well, next week, let's get you on. Andy, tell these Mayo players that
Andy has defended.
We're just talking about the fans here. We're talking about the fans here, Nathan. There's no need to defend your team, and we're just talking about you.
Do you see, Nathan, a kindred spirit between yourselves and England and the English fans?
In what way, Ger?
Well, I mean, very similar narrative. Ian Ladyman used the phrase, the curse has been lifted. And I immediately thought of like, well, geez, the Mayo fans are going to be seeing this as a bit of a harbinger of glory this summer. If England, winning in black and white, Mayo winning in black and white, I'm sure everything else is a harbinger of Mayo.
Yeah, well, the last 2 European Championships, Mayo did get to the All-Ireland final that year. So, listen, the omens are there.
I suppose it's the arrogance without the achievement to back it up was what the point I was getting at.
Well, you can take that from Dublin supporters. Maybe you can even take it from Kerry supporters. I don't think you can take it from Roscommon supporters. Really? Really? Listen, I've no problem with any Dublin fan having a pop at Mayo supporters. Even Kerry would let them away with it for all the success they've had through the years sometimes. But a Roscommon fan, listen, we know how All-Ireland final days happen. We're not there going when Roscommon are in the final, taking their tickets.
Nathan, good stuff. You've been a relatively good sport. Relatively. Phil, thank you very much as well. That's Phil and Nathan giving us some thoughts on the football and the brewing controversy of Frankie Dolan's comments, which have been aflame on the Mayo GAA message boards. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We're going to hear from Seamus Coleman at tomorrow's show, Nicholas Roach and Tommy Walsh. That's an all-star cast. Right now, we're bringing you Mark Lawrenson from last night's show.
They deserved it, in fairness. Like anything in a knockout stage, you will always maybe have a spell where you don't play particularly well, concede the chance, which was to Werner, wasn't it? Should have scored. I think he scores goals, Werner, but he's not a goal scorer. I think it was one of those, keeper comes out, natural goal scorers just dink it over the keeper.
Yeah.
Obviously, he went to go low, and England did well. And then, of course, the Thomas Muller of chance was, of all the German players who played tonight, you'd say, if you wanted a one-on-one, who would you want? It would have been him. And obviously, he didn't really connect with it at all. But England kept at it. The quality of the goals as well that they scored were good. And they work unbelievably hard. They make you raise your game. They make it very, very difficult for you. But, you know, quite a few teams had chances against them. But it would appear at the moment that everything's going for them at the moment.
You mentioned the Muller chance. I mean, there are lots of reasons we all like football. The human drama is part of it, and the shots of Raheem Sterling, who, and I'm not sure it's his natural game to be dilly-dallying on the ball and trying to be too clever and play down the clock, loses the ball and then hands on his head. The shot we have is from behind, and Muller pulls the chance wide, and he just collapses almost in complete relief. His entire life flashed before him. Yeah,
absolutely. And then that's just the way that this is. I mean, the two games we had last night were just absolutely fabulous in many, many different ways that we all know and loved and watch. And tonight was always going to be just a strange one, because England and Germany obviously have this history for many different reasons, not just as footballers, everybody knows, but and the English as well always seem to have a problem in beating the Germans. But they've done well tonight. They played extremely well. But I would have to say to you, this is by far and away the most average German team I've seen for a while. Yes, it's got a sprinkling of some very good players, but it's also got quite a few ordinary players as well in there. And they didn't really play with masses of conviction. They got on the ball first 10 or 15 minutes and we all thought, oh, here we go. But it just never, ever really materialised. And I think the other thing as well, when you know the manager's going to go, if obviously you lose that game, I don't ever think it's quite the same thing. I never understand why football associations let managers carry on when they announce that they're going to retire. I think you just say, pay them off or whatever and shake their hands, have a party and say thanks very much, get the new man in.
Yeah.
But obviously Germany didn't want to do that.
The lame duck syndrome.
Yeah.
In that first 10, 15 minutes where Germany maybe had their most consistent spell of dominance, or certainly being on top, it was notable they went through the centre of England pretty easily. There was the Werner chance you mentioned, and then there was early on Declan Rice almost had to professionally take someone down who was going through as well. So that was kind of striking, three centre backs and the two boys pretty defensively minded, and still Havertz and Muller found some gaps there and went through them pretty quickly.
They did, and it was, I wouldn't say it was a breakaway as such, but it was where Germany came out with the ball, and I think they suddenly realised their forward players, and one thing about them, they're both rapid. They were there and they were gone. So, they rode the luck, which is, it happens. I thought for a moment that Rice, if he caught him really properly, he might have got sent off. In the end, it was, in inverted commas, a good sort of tackle. But look, they've ridden over it, so it'll be a worry, I suppose. But then, are they going to play a team in the next round who are going to do that to them? I mean, we don't know, because it's knockout football. So what is it, Sweden or who is it? They play Sweden or Ukraine, isn't it?
Ukraine. I've given up predicting things after last night, which I'll ask you about in a second. To be fair to England, they were then pretty much on top rest of that first half. Where are you on Harry Kane? He was very much the focus of the BBC halftime conversation. Shearer felt his movement was no good. Klinsmann was making an interesting point. He was saying Kane should come deep and play himself into the game. He does it at Spurs to feel more alive, was kind of the phrase
he used. And I don't know, did we see a bit more of that from Kane in the second half? Where are you on Harry Kane's form at the moment?
Well, the other week when it started and everyone was on about him, all I ever said was that, get him some chances, get people up and around him. And Grealish came on, makes a difference. Sterling as well did extremely well. But Harry Kane, if you watch him at Tottenham, as we all do, and we all rave about him, he has Son in and around him, and he drops off and Son goes in behind him, vice versa. And he's got loads of movement. But I think one of the problems is for him really was the ball from kind of back, middle to the front for England generally comes very, very slowly unless Pickford's pinged a 70-yarder. So it's very, very difficult for him. He's virtually up there on his own because if it's Sterling on one side, Foden on the other, or Grealish, they actually sit quite deep. And he's forever surrounded by 2, 3, sometimes even 4 players. Yeah. So it's difficult, but you saw him as soon as the ball came in the box, as soon as Grealish got on him, his movement was fab, and bang, he just didn't miss.
No.
And it's a bit like, feed the dog, he's hungry, just feed him.
He'll score. And even the header, I mean, it was beautiful. It was beautifully dispatched. Look, he was always going to score it, but you saw kind of the finisher in him. On Southgate, and how he set the team up, because I saw, and look, Twitter's only a reflection of I don't know what, but the general reaction from even the football fraternity, the various journalists who cover England week in, week out, this was a very conservative selection, cowardice almost. These kind of words were coming in. The narrative was being shaped. They were sharpening knives if things didn't work out in advance.
British press.
Yeah. So look, Foden, Grealish, Mount, maybe Rashford to a lesser extent, all left out. But I suspect now Southgate will turn around and say, Phillips and Rice, I knew they'd take care of those two in midfield and largely did okay. And Shaw and Trippier handled, Gosens been one of the players of the tournament, and Kimmich's a really good player, and you have Shaw putting in a cross for the crucial goal. So actually, he may well make an argument that unlike, say, the Croatia game where the fullbacks didn't cross the halfway line, perversely, it may not be the names of Mount or Grealish or Foden starting, but Trippier and Shaw in particular are actually attacking the game a bit more now, and in some ways I don't want to say it was out and out attacking, but it certainly wasn't like super conservative either, the way they played today.
No, and I think that the idea is they kind of with Rice and Phillips, I think, back 3, back 5 today, whatever you wanted to call it, they have this kind of, they want to build this base in the game where it's very, very difficult for the opposition to break down. And always in football, no matter how bad a team you are, you'll get opportunities and you'll get spells in the game where you will have the ball. And it seems very much, it's like, what happens is the opposition do not score. And then eventually, I think what England do is that they kind of wear teams down. And they make good substitutions. I mean, Grealish comes on. That would seem to be the favourite thing at the moment. He comes on, has a little bit of room, goes past fullbacks, etc., holds the ball up, gets your fouls, etc. And I think they did say, didn't they, that is it Holland, his assistant, Steve Holland, I think it is, and Southgate, they'd studied for months teams who'd won these competitions, not necessarily outstanding teams that had won, but maybe teams that were a little bit unfancied, like a Greece. Remember Greece winning? And I think that was in Portugal, I think, wasn't it? And one or two others like that. And they decided definitely that in the first few rounds, certainly league basis, they would be very cautious and very, very difficult to beat. And that was all about not conceding and thinking at the business end, even if there was only probably maybe 3 players at the business end. So, Sterling, Kane, Foden in the first game, they would eventually fashion chances that would get them chances to score, etc. And that's exactly the way that they've been. As to the next game, who knows?
And do you like that logic? Do you think that's fair enough, or is it reductive and conservative and a little... they could be doing a whole lot more. Well,
England in the World Cup, I mean, they got through to the semi-finals. To be honest with you, they didn't beat anyone.
No,
not a good side. They did not beat a good side, and I'm not being bitter about that. They just didn't. And as soon as they played a good side, i.e. Belgium or Croatia, they got beat. But they got the nation with them, which I think is very, very important. And I think Gareth Southgate is just a really, really nice guy. What you see is what you get. And I think he's always going to get a little bit longer in the job. And this was always going to be their best chance because they're at home, aren't they? I know.
Yeah.
Next leg, I don't know if they're away somewhere. I'm not sure where they go, but they're definitely away. And then they come back, and I think arguably they can be at home for the last two games. And by the way, last game Wembley can be full as well. But that's just the way that they've been, and nobody can argue with it. And the whole thing is, everybody has an opinion about England. In England, your Milkman, your Winderclear, they've all got an opinion. And you know, in these days where everybody knows about tactics because it's, you know, you see all the programs, the technical programs all about tactics and, you know, low blocks and high blocks and absolutely everything, 3 at the back, 2 at the back, all those kind of stuff. So everybody's got even more of an opinion than they've ever had before because they've got a lot more knowledge. So that's probably doesn't help in his favour. But he's just that way. No, this is the way that we're going to be. And I think the FA said the other day that even if he fails, in inverted commas, in this competition, he will not lose his job.
Well,
so
I think what you have to say in his favour, and look, it's early days to know if Gareth Southgate's going to be regarded as a great manager in 20 years or not, but he's not afraid to make decisions which, if England lose the game, will be jumped upon, i.e. Trippier in the first game or the change in formation today. Like, he would have known how easy it would have been for the media at large and the fans at large to point to Mount or to point to Grealish or whatever, and maybe a lesser, more insecure manager doesn't play Trippier in the first game even though he has a hunch it might be the right thing to do. So that's what I sort of admire about Southgate, is that he's making decisions which will be seized upon, and he will know that, and he seems strong enough not to let that affect his thinking.
Yeah, and he knows exactly what he wants. And the other thing about it is we don't know the mental side of these players. I mean, obviously, he doesn't have them in terms of club football, so he doesn't have them every day of the week, 7 days a week, etc. But he will know that from the relatively small time he spends with them, what they're like. And you know, the Trippier thing, he just said, in the first game against Croatia, playing him at left back, I absolutely trust him.
Yeah.
And you know, he can come in and play with his right foot, so it's not an issue. I absolutely trust him. And I mean, if you're sending players out at this level and you can trust every single one of them, then you've got a chance. And if they know that you trust them, they will play for you. I mean, they will play for you anyway, but they will, you know, when push comes to shove, they will really play for you. So I think he's just got this thing with all of them, and they really like him. Still relatively young. He was a good player, and he was technically a good player as well. And himself and Steve Holland, you know, they've worked extremely hard with everything they've done. And as I said to you before, that they've studied everything. But I think, you know what, there will be more pressure on them in the next game than there will have been on today.
Well, they have to make the final now. Suddenly, 0-0 at 70 minutes today is tight and tense and understandable. 0-0 at 70 minutes in the next game is going to be murmurs from the crowd and come on, why haven't we scored? And that's the difference. They don't seem like great front runners. They don't seem like a team who'll be great at chasing a game. They still haven't been 1-0 down yet, for instance. No, exactly. Well, not conceded a goal. So, you know, that's great. And I mean, if you're in that 3, 4 or 5, and obviously Maguire's now into stay with Stones. He was good, by the way, Maguire, wasn't he? Oh, very good. And he came out with the ball as well. Yeah. I mean, John Stones has always been a very, very good player. He was technically gifted on the ball, but wasn't a particularly good defender. He would kind of lose concentration at times. But now he's become a really good defender. They're difficult to break down. Mind you, were saying that, and obviously 2 or 3 times the Germans went straight through the middle, which you will get. You will always get chances like that. But you know, if you're going to play them, whoever you are, Sweden or the Ukraine at the weekend, Saturday, I think it is, you know, regardless of how England play, it will be tough because, you know, they run, they chase, they get behind the ball, they tackle, and, you know, they hustle, and it's a very, very difficult team to play against at the moment. So, because I want to ask you about France. So, what are we saying here about England? Because it seems like after every game, we're still trying to figure out if they're any good or not. Are we saying they're going to win this thing? They're going to get to a final? Do you rate them? Do you think there's still something
I'm not
missing?
going to tell you they're going to win this thing. Listen, they quite possibly could, and I would just say to them, if they win this, they will have won it by stealth. But there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
You know, we would all accept that, and we know they've got really, really talented players. I mean, you know, the Sancho and the Bellinghams have hardly featured at all, and one or two more who are outstanding players. But this, he just likes players who he can rely on. And then if needs be, you know, 10, 15 minutes from the end, he wants something a little bit different to kind of unlock the door. Then you might start to see one or two of these guys come on. But if you don't see it, it means that they're still going through this tournament, and they work extremely hard. I've not seen any of the figures or the stats, but as I said to you before, you'd hate to play against them because they're all over you.
Were you confident in Mbappe as he walked up to the penalty spot last night?
No, I thought he was awful in the game.
Yeah, strange.
Yeah, I really... He looked like a lad who'd lost his confidence. We know he's an absolutely fabulous player, but you could just... He was taking too many touches. He was dribbling to when he should have passed, and everything like that. No, I so wasn't... I just said to my better half, I think he might miss this. Yeah. She wasn't interested, obviously, but... yeah, it just... But you know what? The whole thing about that game for me was that I think Deschamps got it absolutely, totally right. They got to 3-1, didn't they? And because the French were playing so well, I think Deschamps thinks, let's go and get another one. You know, let's show them how brilliant we are. Pogba's goal, all that kind of stuff. There was a bit of kind of crooning and all that kind of stuff. Instead of saying, you know what, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll bring on an extra defender. They might poo-poo me, it doesn't matter, and I'll bring off, you know, one or two of the front men, because obviously we're now in the next round. I just think they got that totally wrong. And by the way, as well, defensively, they were hopeless. They were absolutely hopeless. As soon as Switzerland went at them, well, in fact, all the game, every time Switzerland went at them, they looked extremely ropey.
Yeah, it was just a weird game as well. It was like they turned it on France for half an hour when they really needed to, and they were devastating for that 25 minutes. The goals were amazing, and then turned it right back off again. Well,
but why not turn it on from minute one?
Well, what's the answer to that?
Well, that I'm sorry, that well, it comes from the manager, and obviously comes one or two of the players a little bit, but I'm not sure how Deschamps manages them, whether he says, you know, to all of them, you're absolutely brilliant, you're fantastic, you're this, that, the other, or not. But I wouldn't have thought so, because I saw that the video from when France won the World Cup in Paris, and he made that. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah.
That speech at half-time, and it's like, wow.
And all the players are fired up. I mean, Pogba's a man possessed behind the scenes. They're all really into it. So that's why they've been average-ish this whole tournament, and then last night, it's hard to make sense of last night. Well,
it was, and they were just... It wasn't... You know, nobody actually looked like they were playing at 100%. They were cruising through it, and it's a really, really difficult one, because I'm pretty sure there's an unbelievable lot of egos in that team. We're all certain that it is. Yeah. But even so, at some stage, those with egos, if you say to them at half-time, you know what, we could go out of this competition if you lot don't pull your finger out, and you know, we'll be the laughing stock of France.
Yeah, but do you know? Sorry, I have a thought there. Yeah, so I've no doubt that is what was said at half-time, and often very, very good teams, when they start off a game badly, one of the hardest things to do is to change the momentum and to get back into it.
Joe, to do,
so this French team are so bloody talented and good that they start off badly and they still manage to turn it around. Not just turn it around, 3-1 up, Pogba's dancing, we're home and hosed, and then they spit it up again. That's what's like unforgivable. Well, and could have been 2-0 if your man scores a penalty. Sure.
You know, so yeah, it really seriously is. It must just be egos in the team, because look, Kante was, you know, he works unbelievably hard, so it's not him. And in fairness to Pogba works hard, but then you look at one or two of the other players, and they kind of stroll a little bit, and it's a sort of, well, I'll do better next time. And I don't really get that. And you know, I was fortunate enough to play in a team which was, oh my God, if they thought that you weren't pulling it out, they'd just pull you off after 10 minutes. And I don't get the mentality. And people say, oh well, you know, they're super rich and they're all superstars and all that kind of stuff. But I tell you what, you still want to win stuff. And I just thought the French had a really, really good opportunity to win this competition, like a lot of other people, and they just threw it away for me.
I'm just seeing before you go, Rafa Benitez, Sky Sports confirming will be announced as the Everton manager. 3-year deal is what they're looking at. So look, here's the very unfair version of Benitez. The football won't be great, and he's a manager who tactically very shrewd and all that, but the football won't be great, and it's not like his career's in an upward trajectory. So I don't know how excited Everton fans would be about this. What's your sense of Benitez at 61, 3-year deal here at Everton?
Well, let me say this. I think this is like any other manager that goes to a club generally, although there's a bit more hype. But if he wins the first 6 games, he's a genius, and everybody will have forgot about it. I mean, he's everything to the nth degree. I told you the story about Stevie G with him, didn't I?
Go on.
When Stephen was going away to play for England, and Rafa had been there a few years at Liverpool, obviously, and as you know, there were many times where Steven Gerrard carried that team. He was unbelievable, and Liverpool had just won at home in the league. Stevie G was about to go away for international duty, and he was called down to Benitez's office after the game, and he got in there, and Stevie G says, you know, I was expecting you, oh, well done today, make sure you don't get injured, all that kind of stuff. And he said, oh, while you're away and you've got some time to yourself, look at this, Benitez said, and it was a DVD. Do you know what it was?
Go on.
It was a DVD of all his mistakes, which you kind of go. And I said to Stephen, "What did you say?" I said, "I never said anything to him." He said, "A, because I didn't see it then, but when I got it and I saw it, he just said to myself, Rafa, that's how he was. You could be absolutely sensational, but you could have just done something. You could have just gone back and nicked a corner from that fella. And I mean, that's the way that he is. And there's one thing about him is that he'll get lots of money to spend at Everton because, I mean, they spent $500 million and they've wasted most of it, but he really will get that chance to spend money. So we'll see.
Ironically, I'd love to talk to Benitez. Maybe he's like that with all the players. I suspect he probably was. But it seems, whatever way he read Gerrard was pretty keen to get some approval from Benitez, so maybe it worked out just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, they had a great relationship, but I think it was a classic old boot room thing, which was when you kept winning and you're like going to win leagues and cups and all that kind of stuff. The boot room would knock you down because all the newspapers and the supporters were calling you brilliant, you were geniuses, and you could do absolutely everything, invade the moon, the whole kind of thing. And that was the way that the club was. And I think Benitez liked that. He liked that kind of, you know, oh yeah, you might have beaten this team 5-0 at the weekend, but by the way, my kids could have played against you and done just as well. So I think that's how Rafa is. That's his DNA, basically.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.